Joining us now, NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Ali Vitale, who spoke to Congressman Luria ahead of tonight's hearing. What did you hear, Ali, to add more to what we can expect at tonight's primetime hearing?
Well, Mika, you guys laid out what we're expecting for tonight, a full view at the roughly 3 hours that the Congress was under attack and the former president did nothing to stop what was happening here. But I have to tell you, in walking into Congresswoman Luria's office yesterday for our exclusive interview, the first thing that you see is her dedication to service. This is someone who served in the armed forces herself, who has the seals of all of the branches of the military around her. And so when she says that this was a dereliction of duty by the former president, it has a fuller weight when she uses that word duty. Listen.
This was a dereliction of duty of the president, and we're going to talk in depth about the events that happened almost minute by minute in the White House during that day.
How will you do that? Is it a juxtaposition, like almost a split screen between chaos here and nothing happening at the White House? Explain that.
We're going to tie it into the events of the day. So we'll use clips of news footage, like what would he have been seeing on Fox News? What would the rest of the country have been seeing? And then tie it into the conversations that were had. If you were president, wouldn't you just jump into action? Wouldn't you call everyone in your administration, your cabinet, who could, come in and help quell this and monitor the situation carefully? I wonder if President Trump has any emotion about it at this point, or if he's, you know what I mean? It is so raw and visceral for people who were there.
And Mika, certainly that rawness is still here on the Capitol. When I talk to members of Congress who were in the House chamber, in the House gallery, they're expecting to see potentially themselves as pieces of evidence on the screen tonight as the committee details minute by minute what was happening here at the Capitol. And then clearly, based on what Congresswoman Luria is saying there, ties that into what was playing on the networks that we know that the former president used to watch ad nauseum, things like Fox News. And then we also know that the way that Trump spent those hours of the insurrection was watching it all play out on television. In the words of another lawmaker on the committee, he did so gleefully. And so they're going to be able to draw that direct and explicit line between what was happening here and what, frankly, wasn't happening at the Capitol. They're, of course, going to do that through the witnesses that you guys have been talking about, people who served, in the case of Matt Pottinger, all 4 years of this administration, and then ultimately found their breaking point with what they saw happen on January 6th and the role of the former president in that day. But there's also questions at this point about what comes next, because the way that I've been talking about this hearing is that it's more the season finale than the series finale for the committee. They expect when they release their final reports, for example, that they're going to be doing final hearings around that. But there's also open questions because it's an active investigation. Who else might they call? They are still in active deliberations around the former vice president or even the former president. But in talking to Congresswoman Luria, my big question was, how do you not know if you need these people yet? And in the case of Pence, what she told me was interesting. Listen.
Does it make it harder because he's an active political candidate at that point?
Well, for the committee's work?
Yeah.
I mean,
perception-wise.
The purpose of our committee is not explicitly to, go after the former president. It's to lay out the facts. And this is just an incredibly dangerous event that happened in our history. And when I think about it, one of the takeaways I want people to know is that it's not just about the events on January 6th. It's not just about all of these different stages of an attempted coup and the levers that were pulled. It's about what still persists. And, our committee, it has a congressional purpose. So it's to provide recommendations, legislative recommendations for the future so this can't happen again. So, keeping our focus on what the purpose of this committee is, it would just be sort of chaff, I think, but it wouldn't necessarily have an impact on our work.
And of course, there she's talking about what could happen if former President Trump announced his run, as we expect he may, in the next few weeks, running for president again. But in regards to Pence, the difference between calling in Trump versus Pence is that most of the people in Trump's orbit have stonewalled the committee. You see some of them in court even just this week. Others, though, in Pence's orbit have been cooperative, and it's why we could still see the committee move in that direction as they try to balance the presentation of facts in real time with the gathering of facts in real time. Mika.
NBC's Ali Vitale, thank you. Great job. We appreciate it.